The most important Q&A CIG has ever done happening right now about server meshing. Let me explain why. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. I am Montoya. This is Paul Rindell. Let's take a moment to appreciate how he looks so similar to a character from the Marvel universe. But Paul here is actually one of the original CIG employees. Well, he's actually one of the original Crytek employees from Germany, and he's moved to LA many years ago to work with CIG. He knows his stuff, and I have to appreciate the presentation they did here during CitizenCon, where they did their best to really dumb it down for the layman and explain what server meshing is, how it works, object container streaming this and that. I'll admit, when it comes to understanding what server meshing is, I understand what it is. How it works, I won't pretend to understand that. So there are a lot of questions. There's a big Q&A happening right now where they're taking questions about server meshing. And without even showing you, what do you think the biggest question is about server meshing? Without me showing you what it is, I'm going to scroll down in a second. The biggest question, the most upvoted question about server meshing is, that's correct, when? And Angry Rice Esquire asking, when will this happen? The reason why this is the most important question is because, like many of you, you can't have, well, you'd agree with me on this, we can't have an MMO without the MM part in it. The massively multiplayer online part needs to be massively. Right now we have 50 people in a server for a kind of small MMO maybe, but when you have a ship like the Idris or the Javelin or the Pegasus carrier or whatever's coming out in the future that needs more than 20 or 30 people on the ship, how are you going to do it? How can you have a server with 50 people as a limit when a single ship can hold half the people in the server? Well, server meshing comes into play to fix that. And the question is, when can we expect to start seeing this happen? So definitely agree with the first question there. Let's move down to the second question coming from Banner. What is the current state of server meshing tech, and what are the biggest issues holding it back? Exactly right. We know that they know, as they explained very clearly here, about how it should work. But what is stopping it from working, or rather what is blocking it at the moment? So I have to agree with the ordering of his questions. First question is, when can we expect? The second question, what is stopping this from happening and holding it back? This is something which they have not told us before. They haven't explained. I'm sure they have their reasons. The same reasons, well, it's not the same reason, but if I can draw another example, why are ship HUDs messed up on some ships, but then on other ships they're fine? Like the Gladius, it's okay. The reason being, there's a lot of back-end technology still being developed, and when that back-end stuff is done, then they can simply release a new HUD to all the ships very easily. But fixing HUDs individually on every ship right now is going to take a lot of man hours, and it's going to be a waste of time. I think there might be some parallels between that. Well, not the technology, but there are parallels between things happen in the background which just need to happen first. And once those things are done, then server meshing can roll out much faster. But what is it? What is blocking it? I'd like to know too. So question 1 and question 2, absolutely my top 2 questions answered right there. And I hope they do address them, because I really am interested to know, is there a wall you've hit? Is it a problem with hardware? Is it a problem with bandwidth that can only be solved with more bandwidth, or perhaps with future hardware releases, better GPUs, more RAM maybe? What is it's holding you back right now? I'm dying to know the answer to this, and I really hope they do give us a solid answer. Going on to question number 3, most upvoted there, coming from Meckel. How do you plan on managing a large ship, say a Javelin? Would that be its own dedicated resource with ships around it? They answered that in a way with this demonstration they did right here. I can't find the exact time for you, but essentially they've explained it. Like, there's the ship, there's everything else happening there, and it is basically, as they say, mesh. So there is a solution for that. I believe that'll be a fairly easy question to answer. Let's take a look at the 4th question down. How many players will be able to see each other in space? What's the maximum you're planning? Great question. I have a lot of questions. I have similar questions on that too, because if you're on a Javelin and you're looking at a window and there's another Javelin next to you and there's a guy looking out that window, can you see what's happening in each other's ships internally if you're not actually in that ship? That's a lot of information to pass between servers, but I'm dying to know, how will they handle that? Will everything in the server inside a certain Javelin only be visible to people in that Javelin? Because if you're outside of it, why do you know what's happening? But if you look through a window, you should be able to see what's happening. So many questions. I'm unsure how they plan on handling that, but that is a good question too. The fifth most upvoted from Leet Taco, like the name. If I make a base on a moon, will my base be reflected on other shards that I am not? Yeah, it has to. As they've explained in this, what happens in one shard has to replicate all along the others. Not that someone will be on the same moon, but on a different shard and not see your base. Whatever happens on one moon happens to everyone that sees that moon. So it has to. Moving on to the rest of the questions here, should we see 4.0 in the next year based upon your current progress? That kind of ties into question number 1 of when. Is the true end goal single shot for all players? Interesting question. I'd love to know if they can do that. Drawing an example from, say, EVE Online, where it's just one massive server, one massive shot, and we know the the big issues they have with many players in one area of space and the solutions which they have taken to make that work. Like many of you, I have my skepticism, but I have to admit I was very skeptical about Area 18 when they first showed the tech demo of that. I said, how the hell can they show us a planet full of all this detail and buildings? What kind of supercomputer will we need to run it? Yet here we are, spawning in Area 18, flying around with no problem. So a healthy amount of skepticism always needed. And look, if they can pull some kind of rabbit out of a hat and impress us, I'll be impressed. But nothing wrong with being skeptical until such time that they show us how they're going to run this and can we have a single shard. Would be amazing, and I think that'd be a massive breakthrough, not only for Star Citizen, but for all games, all MMOs that follow after this. Question 6 or 7, how well will we be able to play with friends from other regions? Great question, and this is one that we ran into right now, probably ran into in New World, which we've been playing and following very closely also because of Lumberyard. And the solution they have in New World is essentially regions. So if you're from the West Coast, there's West Coast servers. If you're on the East Coast, right, European servers, there's Australian servers. What happens when my Australian friend wants to play with my European friend and they both are on in New World, we're on an East Coast server, pings are horrible. How does this work in Star Citizen with players from other regions? I don't know. And keeping in mind, there's a lot of Twitch-type moves, very fast-moving FPS action in Star Citizen. They have to deal with a lot of lag and latency issues. Great question there. I would like to see this question actually higher up. And those of you involved in a lot of FPS and fast-moving combat, this is very important. Can you, in Europe, fight against a guy in Australia with all that latency in between you? I'm dying to know how they're going to deal with it. Next question is, will the economy of the universe be independent of every shot? No, it's all be joined. Some of these questions we can kind of figure out already. If you have not done so already, drop by Robert Space Industries. I'll drop the link in the first comment below here, and drop your questions into server meshing, persistent streaming Q&A, which is, in my opinion, again, one of the most important Q&As to come out of CIG, and it will essentially explain to us how they plan on making this all work together. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, your comments and questions below. If you enjoyed my content, you know what to do. Give me a thumbs up, and I'll catch you in the next one.